Hey folks, in this video I'm going to show you how to start up a new Space Haven game from scratch. This is version Alpha 12 of the game. If you're playing a later version, the game might be a little bit different for you, but hopefully this video will help you figure out the fundamentals. So we're going to start a new game. The first thing we have to do here is pick which scenario we want to do. There are two scenarios. The basic platform is the beginner scenario, where you start out with a ship that's a little bit established and has some basic systems on board. In the abandoned mining station scenario, you're going to be building your own ship from scratch. We're going to do the basic platform start to show that off first. I'll be doing the abandoned mining station, and we'll show you how to build a new ship in a later video. So we click next. I'm going to do this demo on harsh difficulty. You can choose whatever difficulty is appropriate for you. The difficulty is customizable. You can click on the edit button up here to change the individual settings. One thing I'm going to change here for the platform scenario start, we only start with 4 crew members. This might be good for you if you're a beginning player and this is your first time checking out the game and you kind of want a slow pace. But I'm going to upgrade it to 6, which is the number of crew members that you start with in the mining station scenario, because I want things to progress a little bit faster. If you're impatient like me, you also might want to also make this change. You can also customize the starting resources, the items that your crew starts with, the stuff that's in your beginning sector, the availability of the various different resources, the hazards and factions, and there's a whole bunch of different options here. So check these out if you're interested. Way to go next here. The next thing we're doing here is we're going to select our crew members. This thing on the right here gives us a summary of all the skills. Let's get a quick rundown on what each skill does before we get into it here. So mining is used for gathering resources, super important. You want to have multiple people that have this skill. I would say at least 2. Botany is kind of important in the early game, and then it becomes more important later in the game as you get more access to food growing stuff through your research. Botany is basically the skill that you use for making food for your crew. Construction is something that you use to build your ship and expand it. We're starting with like a floating orbital station, and we're going to be building it out into a ship. So we're going to be using construction very early in the game and very often throughout the game until we get to kind of like the end game where we're just flying the ship that we already built. So that's a pretty important skill. You don't necessarily need to have it at a 3, but you can build things a lot more quickly if you do. Industry is the skill that we use for manufacturing things. So we can take raw materials that we gathered from mining, and we can process them into more refined goods that we can use to build out our ship and build other systems using the industry skill. Medical is used to take care of crew injuries. You would think that that's super important, but I find that it doesn't really come in that much until the late game, because you need to do a bunch of research to get access to medical facilities anyway. You can't really use the skill before that point in the game. And by the time you have that, you're in the late game. You're doing boarding actions and exploring complicated derelict ships with lots of aliens and stuff like that. So this is really a late game skill. It's not something that you need to have a super high level in early on. Navigation, it determines the amount of time it takes you to get your ship into hyperspace. That's fairly important, especially when you're still learning. If you kind of get caught unawares by an enemy ship coming into the sector or something like that, this skill can save your bacon. Gunnery is for shooting your ship weapons. That actually doesn't come in until late game because it takes a while before you're going to get your weapons built. Shielding, same thing. This is for protecting your ship, but you need the technology and the systems to do it. Operations is for ship-to-ship communication. I would say the skill is not terribly important. It basically determines the speed of the operation to hail other ships and run sensor sweeps. Research it's really useful to have multiple people that have this because it determines the speed that your technology increases. Technology increases can save you resources, a lot of resources, and they can give you access to late game items, like I said, weapons and medical facilities, shields, all those kinds of good things. So you want to have the research skill. Weapons is used for small arms, personal combat between your crew members and either aliens or the crews of enemy ships. So I would say this isn't a super important skill, but it's useful to have. Let's go through our crew here and see what we have. We also have, if we look at an individual crew member here, we have our skills for that individual crew member on the right. We also have a trait that's specific to that crew member that gives them quirks. And you can hover over it with the mouse and see what this trait does. This gives us immunity to wearing the spacesuit, which is a debuff that affects a crew member's performance, and spacesuit fatigue, which is another debuff that they get if they wear the spacesuit for a long time. So this is a pretty good one, actually. Other important statistics here, their accident rate determines how likely they are to break something or start a fire on board your ship. That's kind of important. Accuracy is how good they are with a personal weapon in close combat. And you can see how that's computed using the percentages given here. And then there's also their surrender percentage. Negative is better. Negative means they're less likely to surrender when they get shot at, and they're less likely to panic when they get attacked by aliens. So it's pretty useful to have a negative surrender chance. Let's go through all of our crew here. We're missing the construction skill in our current loadout, so we want to have somebody that has a construction skill. We want to make sure we also have multiple research. I kind of want to keep this spacefarer trait, so we're going to leave him alone. This person has research and a good surrender chance, so maybe we'll leave them alone. We have an industry person with a good surrender chance, so we'll leave her alone. We don't want an industry person actually with a clumsy trait, so I sometimes forget to check these things. So the clumsy trait makes us more accident prone. Industry is probably the most dangerous place to have accidents, so we're gonna re-roll this person by clicking on the little die here. So now we have somebody who's good at construction, but we don't have somebody who's good at industry. They're very brave and they're good with weapons, so that's a really great fighter. We're going to leave this person for now because we also do need the construction, but we need somebody else to have industry. So let's look for that. This person only has shielding and operations, which are late game skills, so we're going to re-roll him. Let's see. This guy, we're looking for somebody with the industry skill. So I'm watching the right side here till that lights up. There we go. Okay, so this guy has industry and construction and navigation, and he's brave. He has the minimalist trait, which means he can sleep on the floor if he needs to and eat without a table. That's pretty cool. So we're keeping Lenny here. You can also customize their colors and stuff like that if you want to. I'm not going to do that here for this tutorial. Let's see how many of our people have research at a 2 or a 3. So we have 1 here, 2 here, we got a 3 here, and another 3 here. That's perfect. Okay, I think this is going to be... We're a little bit light on shields. We could maybe use somebody that has shielding. This guy has no maxed out skills except for navigation, even though he does have the spacefarer trait. I think I'm going to re-roll. We're looking for somebody with the shielding skill, I think. At a 3. Sometimes you got to be a little patient. Come on, guys. There we go. Okay. This guy is kind of an okay fighter with a -5% surrender chance. Sometimes they can't have a positive, which means they're likely to panic. This guy's got a bunch of good skills, mining, botany, and construction, so I'm happy about that. Let's get started into our game here. We got a little tip here. Did you know you can find new crew members by exploring hypersleep chambers aboard derelict ships? We'll definitely have to keep an eye out for that. Okay, this is our starting setup here. We're going to get a blue pop-up that says, "Welcome to Space Haven, this is our tutorial." I'll leave it up on the screen for a second, but I'm not going to read it out loud because I'm going to walk you guys through everything. I will point out that there's this checkbox here. You can toggle that to turn on or off the behavior that these things pop up every time you get a new tutorial message. I'm going to leave that on for this tutorial, but I usually turn it off when I'm going through a game. All right, so let's look at what we have here. The first thing I'm going to do is click spacebar to pause it. That's the most important hotkey in the game, in my opinion. You can control, up at the top right here, you have the time controls. So you can pause, you can go to normal speed, fast, faster, or fastest. So if you want to fast forward, if you're waiting for the crew to build something, or they're resting overnight or whatever, you can use these controls to do that. We have some settings here. We're not going to go into that. This indicator up here shows what's in our sector. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. This is basically some resources and things that are available to us. This is our crew roster up here. Over here we have our inventory. So this is a list of all the resources that we have. And we'll talk about what the different resources are and what they do in a minute. Up at the top here, this is our star map. So when we want to navigate, we can click on this, and this shows us where we are in the galaxy. The object of the game is to go from the start, which is all the way on the left side here, all the way over to the right side here. So you can see we've got a long way to go before we get there. What else do we have? This is our crew management. We'll talk about that a little bit later. This is our ship systems managing the navigation, shields, and so forth, and we use this to prepare for a hyperspace jump, which is going to be important in a little bit. This is our weapons systems. We don't have any right now, so these are all X's, but later in the game, when we get our weapons built out, we're going to see this tab come into play. This shows us the tactical map. I usually just do this by zooming in and out with the mouse wheel, so if you zoom all the way in, you zoom all the way out, it takes you to the tactical map. Super easy to get back and forth there. You can just zoom back in again. The tactical map kind of shows us everything that's going on in the sector. So we see that our 4 things that are in the sector here are shown on the map here, and we can scroll around because not everything's always going to be in the view when you first zoom out. This is our data logs. Once we start exploring and going on derelict ships and stuff, we can go through and read these, and this is kind of just basically providing some backstory, a little bit of extra lore about the game and stuff like that. And this is our research, which is where we're going to go to figure out how to get our next technology. We'll go through the research tree in more detail later. Let's look at our starting platform here and see what things we have on board currently. We have over here, this is our storage. This is where all of our stuff is. If we click on an overview, we can see what's in here. We have the option to allow or disallow food consumption directly from storage. Crew members will consume food more efficiently if we build them a kitchen. So we're going to get to that in a minute. We also see all the other resources just like we have in the inventory up here. We see that we have pistols. Let's go ahead and give our crew members some pistols. So I'm going to pick the guys that have negative surrender % and go to weapon skill. Here's one of them, Catherine, Lenny, and Catherine, and Penny, and... Okay, so it's going to be Penny, Woodrow, Lenny, and Catherine. This is going to be our first away team, these 4 guys. I'm going to hold down Control key and hit 1, just like in StarCraft or Command and Conquer, one of those games, to create a command group. So if I hit the 1 key, I can now highlight those 4 guys. The next thing I want to do is I want to draft them and take control. And I want to right-click on the storage here and choose the pickup option in order to pick up guns. Just want to get this out of the way now before I forget about it later. This is just my habit of doing things in order. This is telling me what stuff to build. We'll get back to that in a second here. Okay, so clicking on storage, I'm going to drag the pistols from storage over to the primary weapons, and we're going to toggle between my crew members here and kind of hand out the pistols just to make it a little bit quicker. You can have crew members transfer inventory from one to the other if they're standing next to each other, just like this. Since they're all standing at storage, I'll just hand them out quickly that way. Now I'm going to undraft them and let them go about what they were doing. Okay, so let's start building here. We've got our storage with all of the stuff in it. We've got our airlock, which lets us go outside the ship. And we can also get spacesuits here and charge them with oxygen. We have our power generator that provides power using the blue crystals as resources and converts them into energy. And that provides energy for all the systems that are on board here. We have 2 thermal regulators. These provide heat to make it comfortable for the crew. If I hit this button or hit the R key, this is the View Modes tab, I can click on this to see the current temperature on board the ship, and then hover to look at the temperature on individual tiles here. So we can see it's 12 degrees centigrade down to 7 degrees centigrade. This is quite cold. I think there's an option somewhere in the settings to change it to Fahrenheit, but I'm pretty used to the centigrade at this point, even though I use Fahrenheit in real life. The optimal temperature is about 22 degrees centigrade, so this is a pretty cold station right now. The other things, this is a power node. If we click on links here, when the power node is selected, we can see how energy is traveling through our grid to power the various parts of the ship. There's also a view called the energy view, where we hit R and we go through the different views and click on the little lightning bolt down here. This shows us the availability of power in each area. So we have high availability near the generator here, and we have low availability through these small nodes here, which is okay because these things don't use a lot of power. This is using 0.1 energy units per second, and this is using, these are all fractions of a power unit. This is using 1 energy per second, so that's significantly more. And when we start building industry machines, those things will use even more. The first thing that we want to build, though, is a tool facility. Let me finish going through things here, sorry. So this is a shuttle bay. The shuttle enables us to travel to derelicts, to travel to other ships, and also to trade. So it's pretty important. These are our mining pods. The pod hangar is used with a mining pod to go and gather resources. Let's queue up some resource gathering so our crew has something to do while we're going here and building things. The first thing I want to gather is energy, which is the blue crystals that we're going to use for our generator. So let's start taking that in. So I'm just clicking on that, and clicking on the arrow here in the tactical view to tell them to transfer all 8 of our energy units over to our ship here, and they'll be moved into storage eventually. We're going to queue our first building here. I'm going to click on the build inventory, or you can hit the B key and go to resource. The tools facility is the first resource that we need. And the tutorial will remind us of this. Tools facility enables us to turn infra blocks, which are these guys, into tools, and it's like 1 infra block is like 50 or 100 tools, something like that. So the tools are basically free, but we need them to do any other kind of construction that we want to do, and they're also used for building walls and things like that. We can see that when we place a structure here, it shows which tiles are occupied. There's also this concept of access space. So the 2 empty tiles in front of the factory here are used for the crew members to walk up and put resources into and get resources out of this factory. So those tiles have to stay clear. If I put this over here, you'll see that it won't let me do that because the crew members can't get to the machine that way. But the access spaces can sometimes overlap. So we could put it in front of the generator here, for example. If you need, I'm using the Q and E key, by the way, to rotate this thing. I can also hold down the V key in order to see a tile-based view of my thing here. So I can see these kind of lowered orange spaces are the access spaces, and these higher tiles are things that are blocked off. So if I'm having a pathing issue, I might want to check out this tile view and see how to place stuff. But we don't have any issues with that yet. We're just going to leave that over here. And we're going to unpause it so our crew members can build using the spacebar. So some crew members are already heading to the mining pods, stocking them with construction materials, and then they're going to go out and pick up the crystals, the energy crystals. Over here we have our resource facility being built. Okay, that's done now. Let's see what our next... Where's our tutorial notice here? Here we go. Okay, so we got another objective now. The next thing we need to build is life support for our crew. So there's 2 parts to that. There's an oxygen generator and there's a gas scrubber. Let's take a look at those in the build menu. So there's a life support tab. An oxygen generator is necessary to produce oxygen for the crew. Oxygen also has its own view here. We can hit R and go to the O2 tab, and this shows us our oxygen level. Anything in the 140 or above is healthy. As we get lower than that, then we start to get worried about it. It can go up to, I think, around 255. So I'm going to build the oxygen generator, The other part of the life support is a gas scrubber. Gas scrubber removes excess CO2 from the atmosphere, and there's a view for that as well. It automatically changes this to the CO2 view. You can see there's not much CO2 here because the crew's only been there for a little while, but will build up eventually if we don't build a gas scrubber. Gas scrubber is also important for removing things like smoke and hazardous gas, so it's helpful to have a few of those around as your ship gets larger. Okay, we got our life support done. Okay, the next thing is to control our temperature. We want to build at least one thermal regulator. Now, there's two styles that we can build. A thermal regulator is a standalone unit that we can place on the floor somewhere, and a wall regulator is something that we can place along the wall anywhere. I prefer the wall regulators just because they take up less space, more or less. Let's go ahead and put a wall regulator over on this corner because we don't have any temperature control over here yet. Okay, now we've got an icon here, a notification telling us that we have no power. What we need to do in order to fix that is expand our ship's power grid. And we got a tutorial here telling us there's a couple different types of power nodes. The large power nodes are good for kind of transmitting main power. They have 150 units of power capacity, as you can see in the hover text here. They basically transfer main power throughout the ship. Wall nodes have less power storage. They can only store 50 units of power at a time, but they take up a little bit less space. They can be placed on the wall, just like the thermal regulator. In-floor power nodes can be placed on the floor, which means that they can be placed in an access space sometimes. Like, here's a valid placement location up in front of the oxygen generator, for example. But these only have 25 power storage, so they're not good for systems that use a lot of energy. We're going to put in a main power node here to cover this entire space here. And that should power our thermal regulator. A little bit about the resources that we're using here. You can hover over each of these individual things to you'd hover over each of these individual things to see what resources are taken to build it. So this one costs 60 tools from our tool facility and 1 energy block, which is the blue block here. Quick overview. Hull blocks are used for expanding the hull, which we'll get to in a little bit. Infra blocks are used for things like pretty much every building uses a little bit of infra blocks. Some things like grow beds use extra infra blocks. And then you can also use infra blocks for things like building vents and doors and stuff like that. Tech blocks are used for any structure that has any kind of advanced machine components. They tend to be kind of a precious resource in the early game, so you want to get them whenever you can. Energy blocks are used for building power generators and power-related systems, and also later energy weapons and shields. Soft blocks are used for building furniture components, anything that has a seat, like your navigation console, or things like the kitchen, the tables and chairs, that kind of stuff. These resources here are food. We have different types of food. We'll talk about that in a minute. We have medical supplies, which we're not going to use until late in the game when we have a medical bed. We have energy cells, which we're not going to use until we have shields or robots. And then we have fertilizer, which we're going to use once we have grow beds available. And biomatter, which is produced from our toilets and things. That's basically recycled organic waste that we can put into our composter later. Okay, so let's link up our power nodes here like it's telling us to do. We want to click on this to go to the links menu. And we're going to link this up. I'm going to make 2 links here. Okay, so now we have power to our thermal regulator. This is telling us we don't have enough oxygen generation, so we're going to build a second oxygen generator. That's probably because we expanded our crew from 4 to 6 here. We can also build lights. So let's get our second oxygen generator online first. I think this should be okay. One thing I want to do, let's put some walls in here. I'm going to wall off this area. Machinery like this makes a lot of noise. If you hit R and look at the comfort view, we can see that this whole ship is super uncomfortable, and most of it comes from the generator, which is negative 160, 170. and the hangar bays, which are like negative 200, negative 180, whatever. So these are super uncomfortable areas. We don't want our crew to be subjected to that all the time while they're working. So we can use walls to contain the discomfort here. So I'm going to go ahead and put in some walled off areas. Let's see what we can do here. We can't build up to the shuttle bay because there's a little bit of access space there. Okay, let's put a little bit of wall. I ideally want to... I don't really like the starting layout too much because it doesn't give you a way to wall off the hangar completely from everything else. What I actually want to do is I want to move this power node. Moving things, by the way, it doesn't cost you any resources really. You can pretty much shuffle stuff around however you want to. The only thing is when you're moving a power node, it's going to get disconnected from the power grid. So this stuff is going to be unpowered until our power node gets rebuilt. There we go. You see already we have multiple things under construction, so our crew's racing around doing all these tasks. Totally nuts. Okay. Our power grid's all connected up now. Let's finish our wall. There we go. Okay, so now we have a walled off section that just has the airlock and the shuttle bays and pod bays. We want to make sure that we have somewhere that our crew can get through here. Let's put in a door over here to get to the comfortable area, and another door somewhere over here to get to the generator area. Sometimes it won't let you place the thing right away if there's like construction going on or a thing being canceled or moved. You have to unpause it and let them do something, or let the game load for a second and then unpause it again when you want to do your construction. So here we've got all that. I'm trying to figure out actually if we can wall off the generator and have like a little carter that just goes to storage, which is what I'd like to have. I'm going to actually move this oxygen generator over to the far corner here, so that we can have a little more room. Okay, so we can always queue up things for construction when we're paused, which makes it a little bit easier to figure things out and avoid making mistakes like blocking off or trapping crew members. I want to move this thermal regulator, but we'll worry about that in a minute. The name of Space Haven is the I'll fix this later game. That's how everything goes. Okay, so I'm going to put some doors in here so our crew can kind of get through. I'm going to put another door here. Actually, we don't technically need a door there. We can just leave that open. We'll put a door there anyway. Okay, now we have a nice little carter system, and if we look at our comfort view, we can see that we still have these red areas by the hangar and the generator, but now the discomfort is kind of contained. So it's bleeding through the wall a little bit in this adjacent area, but we have a section here that's somewhat comfortable. Now we need lights. So there's two types of lights. Stand lights give us some more illumination over a larger area, but they take up space on the floor. And wall lights give us a little bit more kind of localized illumination, but they also take up less space. Let's just go ahead and put some lights around. We can kind of space them out evenly to make it nice. These things just cost tools to build, which is basically nothing. Half of an infra block. Okay, so we've got a lot of lights on board. Some of them are unpowered. I might delete the unpowered ones. We're unable to sleep in spacesuits. We got nowhere to relax. We're going to expand the hull. I'm going to get back to that in a minute. Before we do that, I think I want to build like beds and a kitchen. Or, well, let's do things in the tutorial order. It's fine. These guys have no place to remove their spacesuits. I think that means we have a ventilation problem. So gas travels. If we look at our oxygen here, yeah, oxygen's okay. Temperature is a little hot in the generator room, but it's otherwise okay. CO2 level's okay, so I don't know what these guys are complaining about. There we go. Okay, they all took their spacesuits off now. I guess there was maybe an area that was blocked off. I think the generator room was blocked off briefly while the construction was going on. This is telling me that there's an inaccessible area. We can see the inaccessible areas in the tile view, or by clicking on the isolated areas here in this view. This orange area is inaccessible to the crew. So in order to avoid getting that notification, I'm just going to make some wall modifications here and tighten this up a bit. So I'm going to delete these lights. I'm using the delete key here, but you can also just use the... Try not to click on that little red thing. There we go. You can also use the dismantle button here. There we go. Okay, so now we can delete this wall segment and this wall segment. And we should have something a little bit better here. Okay, their crew's sleeping for the day. It's unfortunate that we didn't get our kitchen and stuff like that done on the first day. You can see this little coffee icon over the head shows they're on break. We can see the crew schedule and modify it if we need to by clicking on the crew management. There's a schedule tab that shows when the crew's working, when they're eating and resting, or when they're eating and taking a break, and when they're sleeping, using the color-coded bars here. We can change this if we want to. So we wanted them to, let's say we wanted to operate our crew in 2 shifts. We could clear this out using the paintbrush tool here, and then we could give them a different sleeping time, like so. I'm not going to do that in this case. I just wanted to show that as an example. We can copy settings from one crew member and then paste them onto another crew member using these arrows in order to match up their schedules if we already have one crew member that's scheduled the way we want. The other thing we can do is we can override crew schedules. If I select some crew members here, I can click on this override button, and then we can tell them, you know, let's work another hour, or let's give them some free time or some sleep time. This can be invaluable in a crisis, the extra work time. You can also tell away team members to sleep when you're expecting a battle or things like that. So it's pretty useful in general. The next objective here is telling us how to expand the hull. So let's look at that. We're going to click on the toolbar here, but instead of going through the menus here, we're going to click the Edit tab. And then this is going to take us to the hull tab. And what we want to do is we can click Build Hull to expand our hull. Now we zoom out a little bit here, we can see this is our whole buildable area of our ship. If we zoom further out and click on this plus icon, we can see that there's a grid that overlays the entire sector. And this particular ship is worth 4 points, which means it occupies a 2x2 space on this larger grid. We can build new ships and build different size ships using the menu down here, but we don't need to do that for right now. Okay, so let's build our hull here. What do we want to do here? Let's make like a nice bridge for our crew. Something like a bridge in a crew quarters. The other thing you can do here, there's sketch tools. So if you click on the sketch tool, you can plan future expansion. If I want my ship to be a certain shape, let's say, I can go ahead and use that. And there's also like a little ruler. If I zoom in here, you can click and hover using the sketch tool, and it says this is a 1x10 or a 2x10 area. So you can use that to measure and make sure your ship is symmetrical or lined up the way you want. You can erase sketch using the erase sketch tool, and you can cancel planned hull construction by using the cancel hull tool. And then you can also remove existing hull using the remove tool. So now we're going to let our crew sleep. I have it on fast forward. And they're going to start using the mining pods to construct our ship's hull and expand it. Okay, it's telling us to build beds and a toilet. I'm going to go to the Objects tab and go back to Furniture. This is telling us to build individual beds, so let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to put them as far away from the generator as possible, I think. Maybe let's put We have 6 crew members, so maybe let's do the bunk beds. Maybe we went a little overboard with the lights here. I don't want these things to be kind of in the way. So let's get rid of this one light. Got our 3 beds. And we also wanted a toilet. That's in the facilities tab. Now, the toilet generates discomfort, so we're going to put it a little bit away from the bed here. We want to wall that off to contain the discomfort. And we want to provide a door so they can get into it. We also have discomfort coming through here now because we opened up this gap in our walls as our hull expanded. So we want to make sure that we close off that. The other thing we want to check when we're expanding our hull is the temperature, because the temperature is naturally going to drop as the hull gets larger and we have to heat a larger area. Let's put another thermal regulator over on this side to mitigate that. Okay, next we need food. We need to figure out our crew's food supply, or how to eat food. So we have a kitchen, we have an algae dispenser. We're going to need both of those things probably, because the kitchen is going to be stocked with food from our storage, which we only have, because we're playing in harsh difficulty, we've only got like 5 of each food unit remaining. So we're going to want to make sure that we get that sorted quickly. Okay. That's going to be filled in here. I don't think we need this extra space actually right now. Eventually that's going to be expanded. But for now, I want to just build our food stuff in this main area here. So we're gonna, I don't want to block off the back part of the beds here. So we're gonna build this over here a little bit. And then we're gonna put an algae dispenser maybe over here. This is gonna be our kitchen. And then we'll have maybe a little dining area, let's say, over here. Now we have this notification over here that says nowhere to relax. My initial thought when I first played this game was, why can't I solve this? I've already created beds for the crew. This is actually telling me that they don't have chairs. So if we put some chairs down, that'll give the crew some place they could take a break for a minute and maybe eat in between work. Okay, the next thing we want is a water purifier. I think we're going to expand our engineering section over here, or maybe we can fit this in here for now. Let's. We want a water purifier. Water purifier is going to need ice. And we don't have any of that on board, so we're going to go to our ice tab here. The ice is basically converted into water by the water purifier, and this is going to be our first industry task. So we're going to start collecting the ice, and we're also going to queue the water purifier to be built. And we got our kitchen built, so that's pretty nice. Now, once the kitchen is built, I'm going to turn off the direct food consumption from storage here. That'll prevent our crew members from eating food out of storage, which is way less efficient than using the kitchen to prepare meals. So we want them to prepare meals. Okay. With the water purifier set up, we can now start doing industry tasks. So if I click on Refine here, I have the option to convert a fifth of a unit of ice, into a unit of water. I can do this on a continuous basis. I can do one-off tasks. I'm just building 3 water units right now. What I prefer to do, though, is I prefer to set up rules. So if I click on If, I can say, if I have less than, let's say, 7 units of water on board at any given time, then I'm going to produce more water units. I can also set up multiple rules, and this will be important later because the industry tasks are on a round robin. If I have a ton of industry going, let's say I've got 10 different machines that have industry jobs. I'm going to do them kind of in a round robin. So I'll go through each one of the 10 machines before I get to producing more water. If I have a high demand for water on board the ship, I might want to be having multiple jobs to produce water so that they produce water 1 out of every 5 jobs instead of 1 out of every 10 jobs. I hope that makes sense. So we're going to set up some rules to produce additional water if the water level on board the ship is really low. Okay, the next thing we want is a recycler. For that, we're going to need a little bit of extra space, and I want our engineering section to be kind of in the aft area of the ship. So let's build a little bit more hull here. This should be about enough for a recycler. Recycler kind of wants to be in a compartment on its own. The game recommends that you build an airlock door, a spacesuit door for the recycler, because the recycler generates hazardous gas and it's likely to start fires. So we'll show how to do that as soon as the hull gets built. While we're out here, let's also start harvesting our Hyperium crystals. We'll eventually use those when our ship's ready for takeoff. Could maybe use an extra pod to speed things along a little bit. But right now we don't have the hull space, really. Unless we use this front area, which I want to save this for, like, the bridge systems, like navigation. Okay. It's the end of our second day. While we're waiting here, let's look at our crew status. We can click on the Skills tab to see the individual crew member stats, just like we saw in character creation. We can also click on the Status tab to see what's going on with them right now. So we can see their health, how tired they are, in other words, how much energy they have, how well fed they are, how comfortable they are, how safe they feel, which is based on their injury status and things like that, and how good they're feeling socially. These things all affect the crew members' overall performance, the likelihood that they're gonna cause accidents on board the ship and stuff like that. And then individual buffs and debuffs are listed over on the right here. You can also see in the conditions tab, this guy ate too much, so he's got a little bit of a debuff there. That's just a thing that happens sometimes. I don't think you can prevent that. And he doesn't have very good relationships with many people, so I'm not sure why that is. Hopefully they'll work that out over time. He's awake and he feels comfortable. And then this is inventory, which is basically just his weapon and whatever he happens to be carrying, if he's carrying an item other than food. So we can see our crew members eating. A couple of them are using the table here to eat. Okay, so they've started their day now. We're working on building the recycler still. And we can see them also stocking the kitchen. We can use the overview to look at what's in the kitchen currently. So we have nuts, 1 unit of nuts and seeds, 1 root vegetables, 1.4 units of fruit, and 1.3 units of artificial meat. So the nice thing about building a kitchen is that they're going to eat a fraction of a unit of each food type instead of just eating a whole unit of food every time they eat. So it's way more efficient to have a kitchen. We can also, if we want to, we can tune the crew's diet. This will come in later as the crew starts to have like protein deficiency because we're not producing meat or things like that yet. So you can click the modify button if you want to adjust their diet to try to compensate by using extra of a different type of food. Let's say if we want to feed them more nuts and seeds to give them more protein, for example, we could do that here. So we're waiting to place our recycler from the resource tab. Our mining pods are both busy mining though. We're not using our crew's time that efficiently. I'm trying to think if there's anything else we can build while we're waiting here. I don't know why this isn't getting built. I'm gonna try replacing that wall segment here. Here we go. I want to check our relative temperatures in here. This is pretty hot. This is temperate, and this is cold. So I think we're going to put in some vents to more evenly distribute the temperature throughout the ship. So let's place one, let's say, here, and another one to vent heat from the generator room, let's say here. That should help even out the temperature. So you can see the temperature is rising over here because we put in some air vents there. Expanding the ship uses hull blocks a little bit at a time. One hull block, I think, makes like 5 or 10 squares worth of hull. So that's a pretty good ratio. There we go. Okay, now we can build a recycler. Now when we build a recycler, we're going to want to wall it off, like so. And then we want to create a spacesuit door to access the recycler safely, and enable crew members to work there in kind of a vacuum environment. A little trouble with it. So we have to poke a hole in our wall. This spacesuit door kind of has a cross shape, and the way that the spacesuit door works, it's a little bit tricky to place correctly. The way that it works is that the part that is sort of like the long end of the cross has to have one of its nodes inside the walls here. So we have a wall over here, we have a wall over here, and we have a wall over there to create a continuous lock with the spacesuit door. If we try to place it here, we won't be able to place the walls there because the spacesuit door has to be accessible in those tiles. So we just want to make sure that we place it correctly, and we want to make sure that we have enough space on both sides of it so that the crew members can access the spacesuit door from any angle on either side. What are you saying? No access path. Okay, that's fine. Alright, spacesuit door is not on the power grid. I'll get to that in a second. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is we want to provide power for our recycler. We're going to put a large power node because the recycler uses a lot of power. We might even put multiple large power nodes to act as kind of like cheap batteries. Let's go ahead and do that. Okay, now that we have that, we could start recycling. We don't have any scrap on board, though, so we're going to have to collect some scrap from the derelict ship. Before we do that, though, let's follow the tutorial. It's telling us to build a hull stabilizer. Maybe, actually, we can do multiple things at once here. Let's go ahead and build a little bit of space at the back here for kind of like the main ship's drive. Okay, unfortunately I'm going to have to wrap up there for today. I was kind of hoping to get our ship ready to fly to the next sector, but we didn't have time in this video. So next video we're going to figure out how to turn our space station that we have here into a ship. We're going to do some exploring of our derelict ship that we have in the sector over here, and we're going to start flying to other sectors and looking at our options in terms of travel and gathering more resources. Hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know what you think in the comments, and I will see you next time. Love the soundtrack in this game. Take care.